Let's talk about this story that you guys have at the Post Millennial because it's horrifying and probably will get us in trouble on YouTube, but we should talk about it.
Let's do it.
It didn't get the high school in trouble on social media, so it'll get us in trouble for.
We'll get in trouble for talking about it.
No, it didn't.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was.
All right.
It was
so
on
good.
social media. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we're
From
fine.
Post Millennial, investigation underway after Kentucky high school hosts drag pageant featuring male teens in lingerie giving lap dances to staff.
Oh my gosh! I didn't realize the people dancing were minors.
Yes.
I didn't know. I'm serious.
Yeah.
When people were sharing the story, I was like, "Oh, that's horrible and disgusting." I didn't realize that it wasn't like they brought people in to do something inappropriate in a high school. They actually had minors doing this. Dude, that's like
teen girls in
prison
Hooters
stuff. That's like
and stuff. Yeah.
That should be hard time.
Yeah.
Those are minors. You're having give lap dances.
Yeah, there are
that's a sex offense.
The absolute state of these United States.
What is happening right now? Oh my gosh.
It was Jacob Gardner. I just want to say that. The man who killed
Gardner.
himself.
Yeah.
Gardner.
We talked about him.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, he was the guy who was in Omaha.
Yeah, that's right.
And they attacked his restaurant.
Right,
the guy was choking him out.
Right.
Well,
That was him.
not only do we have those kind of stories, we also have this where at a high school they're having minor males give lap dances to teachers.
Okay.
That is so unbelievable.
And the principal.
No, it's not. Come on,
I mean, you're right. It's unbelievable, but it's so the audacity of these people. First, they shut the schools down for over a year and whine and complain. Anyone tells them that they have to go back into the classroom and do their job. And then on top of that, they happen to be pushing all this CRT stuff, this sort of Keynesian perverse sexual education curriculum with all of these gross modern ideas in it. And then, before this story breaks, we're seeing think pieces about how parents don't really have rights. We need to allow the teachers to do their job.
We have the Attorney General saying that as well. The Attorney General today affirmed that he was going to continue the investigation into angry parents.
That's what we need to investigate.
The National School Boards Association has basically rescinded their original letter from September.
That's what they need to be investigating, of course, not the rampant sex abuse problem in public schools. It's also not as if this is an isolated occurrence.
Do you see
Sexual abuse is a common phenomenon in public schools.
This is just a practical, right? This is like just the practical from the gender queer health class.
Exactly.
Did you see that book that was going viral today?
We're weird for
Gender
making
queer.
it weird, right?
Yeah, where it shows
the president touted this book. It is disgusting. If you look at it,
I saw some
it's
of
got
it, unfortunately.
It's sex acts in it.
Yeah.
Between
It's pornography.
minors,
and it's
right?
not just written down.
It is.
Explicit
It's pornography.
sex acts.
It's drawn. Yeah.
It's very visual.
So
it's got
very
depictions
explicit.
of minors engaging in adult activities.
Yep. So this stuff is unbelievably disgusting. I did a video a couple weeks ago that I spent a long time researching, and it's about a gentleman named Kinsey, by the name of Kinsey.
I watched that one.
Yeah, and he is known as the father of sexology, Dr. Kinsey. He basically
one of my friends
defined,
in high school, their dog was named Kinsey.
Ooh,
oh wow, yeah, no, he
To like shame the guy.
I hope so.
No, it was just they thought it was funny.
I mean, a lot of people name their dog Seamus. It's a very common thing when I say my name is Seamus. Oh, I had a dog named Seamus.
Oh, great, wonderful.
But anyway, yeah. So Kinsey is basically the person who, he is the sexology what Freud was to psychology. I mean, he basically developed this field, and his accolades went on to develop SECUS, which sets standards basically and largely influences federal standards for sexual education, or what we call comprehensive sexual education in the United States. So Kinsey, and this is all the way back in the 40s, right? He was doing these surveys on human sexuality, and he published a document saying, hey, what we learned from our surveys is that people are not following the sexual morals and norms that society has attempted to foist upon them. Now, his findings were faulty, and Abraham Maslow, who was by no means a religious conservative, came forward and said, this study was horribly done because he oversampled prisoners, homosexuals, prostitutes, and it was also self-reported. That was the thing Maslow had the problem with. That was self-reported. Who in the 40s is going to tell you their sexual history?
The VAERS of sex practices.
Exactly. Weird people.
Yeah.
And so on top of that, there was the official story from the Kinsey Institute, and they've changed their story. But the official story is that there was a child sex abuser who came to Kinsey, who Kinsey taught how to use a stopwatch to time his sexual abuse of the children so that he could publish it in his documents. And in the Kinsey Mail report, there is a data table showing data, I'll put it this way so I don't get your channel deleted, that you could only possibly have if you sexually abused the child to get it. And so this is the guy who's upon which we have based the field of sexology. And his disciples went on to found SECUS, and It's all done with the assumptions that he forwarded in our culture, and the guy was a pervert who was enabling pedophiles.
Well, we're still enabling pedophiles.
And we're still enabling
right
pedophiles.
now, yeah.
But my point is...
I mean, here it is in Kentucky.
Well, but that's my point. People see things like this and they think it just started. But the seeds were sown for this a very long time ago. You had in the 1980s in Time magazine, Pomeroy, one of Kinsey's co-authors, saying that he thought that incestuous behavior between adults and children is not necessarily harmful. Just on record.
Wow. Yikes.
Just on record.
So this is what we're starting to see translate into these schools.
Exactly.
That's how it kind of comes together for people.
Exactly. I mean, you build your house on sand, it falls apart, right? And if your house is built upon these horrific, immoral sexual attitudes, you get horrific, immoral sexual outcomes.
Yeah,
and
not
that includes
surprising.
sexual abuse.
It's funny because it feels like conservatives have been asleep at the wheel for a long time.
Very long time.
Democrats
Well, one
have
thing-
mastered their ground game. They've
Yeah.
really dominated for a long time.
But the Democrats are in charge of corporations. They're in charge of political power. They have all the
Schools.
cultural power. They have the academic and institutional power. So they have control over all of these avenues of power in the United States, and they're using it to bludgeon the rest of us. And they're acting as though they are speaking out against power because that's the language that they have used to gain power. We're
Right.
speaking against this overarching authoritarian, totalitarian moral code. And now they're using those exact same tactics to destroy us
Amen.
on purpose.
Well, and because all along to them, power was just newspeak for thing we don't like, right? Because it's
Right.
blatantly obvious that they're the people in power. So whenever they say your publication attacks the downtrodden and you punch down, they say this about humor they dislike all the time. It's punching
we have
down. The people are
the
punching
Chappelle
down.
and everything
Right.
else.
Exactly. What they mean by down is thing we like. Doesn't matter whether that thing is
Right.
empowered or not. What matters is they like it. So they say it's powerless or it represents the powerless. But it has nothing to do with actual power dynamics. It just happens to be something that they like, and so they know it's better optics.
The
to
seat,
say
of, the
that's
seat
not,
of power
yeah.
is corporations.
Yeah, well,
It is
yes.
corporations, and
100%.
we're seeing that so fully. We see that online all the time. Like the corporations do what they're told. That's how it appears, and then they take all of that and they foist it on the rest of us.
I was looking up
And
chief
it's just
diversity
as oppressive.
officer.
It's just as oppressive as the religious authorities used to be.
I would say less.
It's worse.
Or I would say more.
Yeah, it's
Sorry,
way
I would
worse.
say way worse.
Like religion, deeply influential in a lot of ways. But when I was growing up, nowhere near the power of massive corporations.
No, but the
church,
left told us that they had that kind of power. The left told us that this moral
Right.
authority was bad and that we needed to fight against it.
and it was really
that's
just
how-
people voting together.
Well, and you
Yes,
know why?
that's
Because
correct. And it was communities. It was communities
Right.
helping each other.
evil always calls for tolerance, and then when it's ascendant, it calls for compliance. And that's exactly what we're seeing.
Yep.
And it's
Welcome to the
interesting.
state of,
Well, it's interesting when you look at these corporations. Oftentimes, they'll make decisions about who they should hire or fire. What kinds of, and when I mean who they should hire or fire, I mean in mass, like what, number of minorities do we need at this company? Do we need to hire more women of color, more transgender people, etc.? Should we apologize for this commercial? Should we try to bring more diversity, etc.? They make decisions like this on the basis of a small handful of people at Twitter tweeting at them because they think that means there is a large number of people or a large majority of people out there who are going to boycott them if they don't obey, right? So one of
There's
their employees
another
does
out-
something wrong, and then a couple people tweet at them, they lose their minds because the quote-unquote consensus on Twitter is one way. But what's
Yeah, but
really
look,
important, I just want to say one more thing. According to a Pew survey, Twitter users are plus 15 Democrat. So it would be one of the most democratic states in the country. And that's basically where they're doing, you wouldn't quite call it market research, but that's where they're getting a lot of their data on what the American people want.
I looked up chief diversity officer.
Yeah.
That's a new thing.
It sure is.
And Wikipedia's first entry goes back to 2008. And if you look up CEO, it goes back to 2002, obviously, because CEO has been around for a long time. Diversity officer is basically Communist Party member.
Right.
So the Chinese Communist Party has
Amen.
They have their party member in all these businesses
Yeah.
that assert authority and control over how you fall in line. Now what they're starting to do is they're starting to make chief diversity officers, and it is the most insane thing you can ever imagine.
It's a good point,
it's
man.
it's like a tumor. Because think about it. What does a chief executive officer do? I mean, they run the show. They make executive decisions
Right.
on everything. Now, the chief operating officer executes on those things, is in
Manages
charge of
employees,
the
yeah.
manages the day-to-day everything, runs the operations. Then you have chief marketing officer, head of marketing, chief technology officer. Then you have like content officers. You have high-ranking positions based around specific tasks for companies. What would so content, chief content officer? We know what that does. They manage and oversee content. What is content? Well, it's the thing you're making and selling. Chief marketing officer, they're selling the product to everybody. Chief operating officer is running the company. They're doing things that make money and that matter. Chief diversity officer,
The chief
proselytizing
diversity, yeah.
ideology.
And the
Ensuring you
chief diversity
comply.
and the chief diversity officer has to make sure that racism remains front and foremost
right.
in the company.
Exactly.
You have to make
Yep.
sure that there's constantly racism problems in the company. Otherwise, you have no
That's the
job.
point, yeah.
There's no
Yep.
point
Amen.
of the chief diversity officer other than maintaining their position.
Yes,
within
it's
the company
exactly. This is why
and making human resources a bigger department.
Yeah, well, this is why Thomas Sowell said, never put activists in charge of solving a problem.
Of course.
The activist
Because
has
they
nothing to
just-
do if the problem
they
gets
just
solved.
want to perpetuate
Yeah,
it.
they're
Yeah.
going to find things that seem problematic when they aren't, because that's their bread and butter.
I learned this when I worked for these nonprofits. A good nonprofit puts itself out of business. Hey, here's problem. We want to solve
beautiful.
problem. We made a bunch of money. We campaigned for problem. Problem is solved. Goodbye, everybody. Have a nice day. They never do.
Well, once I think it was clear a couple of years ago when they investigations started into these not-for-profits. There were like the Race for the Cure, whatever that one was
Breast
with the
cancer
pink
thing.
ribbon.
Yeah.
It turned out that some massive amount,
95% of all the revenue.
95%
Yep.
of the revenue went to
Yeah.
further the operation itself, not to do anything. None
Well,
of the,
so-
the
so-
money was
no, it went to
hitting.
salaries.
Yeah, that's what I'm
So-
saying. It was all for administrative costs.
Right. So
it wasn't to further the mission. It was to maintain the company itself.
it's supposed to be like a good nonprofit is 90% charitable, 10% costs. I think it's fair to say, because I've worked for some nonprofits where it's like 50-50, and you're like, well, look, if paying the salaries of the people running the company is consuming an amount of resources and it's high, I still think it's fine. If it's 95 to
That's
5,
just too much.
That's insane,
not
yeah.
legitimate.
I mean,
Especially for a very large nonprofit where
Yes.
the executive director is getting paid millions of dollars.
Exactly. I mean, it's thinkable that in certain circumstances, based on the kind of activism they're engaged in, it might be more complicated, so the administrative costs might be higher, but 95% is absurd.
It's really just all about the gala. So that everyone
Yeah.
feels good.
Yep.
It goes back to those celebs giving themselves awards again. That's what it's all about.
That's
Yep.
what exactly.
Indeed it is.
Big old circle.
And then
of
these are the
jerks.
tax breaks.
Indeed,
And then
yes.
these are the tax breaks that are taken by the big multi-billion-dollar corporations that
That's
Elizabeth
right.
Warren wants to pay their fair share. But they're giving all their money to the gala.
It's not so easy. You know, I'm learning this especially. People think that a lot of these ultra wealthy individuals will start a nonprofit and just hide their money or an LLC. It's not that easy to do, but they find these workarounds where they can do certain things. There's
Tim's like, I know it's not easy. I've looked into it. All right.
well, no, because we're doing 2 nonprofits.
Yeah.
No, I
And
know.
so,
I'm on the board of one of them.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
And so I'm talking to our accountant about like, okay, so I want to get this ball rolling on truth in media. We want to start fact checking. What can we do? Like, how much can we do? And they're like, here's your limit. You can only do so much. You'll need to find other donors. And I was like, oh, wow. All right. Well,
Interesting.
there you go.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can just hide all your money or write it all off. But
Yeah.
there are things that these companies do where it's like you'll create 10 nonprofits and then they have the money as like a whirlpool shuffling around, which basically cleans them of tax liability and things like that. So it's like, if you got 10 nonprofits, then you can donate a little bit to each one.
Oh
Then
my
they can
gosh.
all donate to one. Then you can pay yourself a $10 million salary.
It's so
there was
scummy.
also crazy things when I was
Gross.
doing theater arts, because one of the things people would do is start their own theater company, right, so that they could do their own work, which I did that too. But other people they created not-for-profits out of their theater companies so that they were charitable organizations when it was really just like a couple of people from Barnard or whatever who wanted to do theater projects. And then they would get all of their families to donate and their families' companies to donate so that all of this money would just pour in.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Now, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.